is proper. Pardon me, my brother, if I don't pronounce your name well. You're going to help me pronounce the name well because me and you na fambu. Let me try and pronounce your name. um, let me try to pronounce your name properly. Let's see if I get it right. All right. His name is Melvin Tejan Mansaray. He's the interim international desk officer, Sierra Leone Parliamentary Press Gallery. Did I get your name right?
Absolutely, you're right. Thank you
Great.
very much, Miss Alonso.
Thank you for joining us. Paint a picture to the average Nigerian who has somewhat thought that Sierra Leone has enjoyed some sort of relative peace after what it experienced during the war. And for the longest time, it was referred to as a war-torn country. And here you are. At some point, many would say you've achieved some level of democracy and relative peace. But now, with the story that broke about the attempted coup, one would wonder, could this lead to something else?
Absolutely, it's already caused something else, and that's an atmosphere of uncertainty, an atmosphere of fear, and of course, a divisive climate also, one that is permeated in characterization of, well, pro-government and opposition. And politically, I will state here that the country is just bouncing back from an opposition APC boycott on governance. And that is due to the fact that they argued that they just concluded, well, the June 24 general elections were not credible. And thus they took to the radical stance of boycotting governance, meaning parliament, local governments, and other statutory bodies. Fast forward, after 3 months, with the help of ECOWAS, African Union, and the Commonwealth, deal was brokered between the government and opposition, All People's Congress, and they indeed ended their boycott on governance, and everything was going smoothly until that of November 26th, when woke up to gunshots and very unfortunate incident of that of the maximum prison being and prisoners fled, told by the government that at the Wilberforce and Moritown military barracks in Leone, some arms and ammunition set away. We don't have specifics as to their number. And to speak, over 50 people are in police custody and under investigation. And you right mentioned one of them is that of the former president, who happens to be the former leader of the People's Congress in the opposition party. And instantly so, unfortunately so, his daughter, also in the United Kingdom, has also been named. So it's an unending scale of events, and see why these things are calm, but that's not to say how their fears. And politically also, is this ongoing political dialogue. Yesterday, there was supposed to be a meeting for developing of the COR. According to sources, that never happened. And the people are now questioning what could be for the peace, the political peace talks that was ongoing. Definitely, I think it's been tested because one of the resolutions that our political prisoners were considered for release. Members of government who did not participate in governance for 3 we should consider paying them their emoluments, and of course, ultimately a review on their electoral process and the recommendations to be binding on all sides. So, this atmosphere of mistrust, and certainly that was my president when he spoke to ECOWAS, indirectly finger the opposition that ever since he won in TT, they've been restless, they've not been given the support he's required or he's been required them. So, it's quite a politically sick and tough situation here. But like every other situation, Sierra Leone dubbed resilient people having gone through war, Ebola, Corona, and now political toxicity. So that's the situation here.
Let's talk about a lot of people. Many have posited that the president himself could be part of the reason why, from the information you've given, why the political climate is the way it is. Many think that he's also some sort of a grip that has on the whole country. That there's not that freedom of speech as it used to be. Hence the opposition fighting back. You called the elections obviously someone who's best man. From the onset, did you see anything that made you think that election was not credible? I mean, you followed the Nigerian elections also. Many people didn't see the fact that the president actually lost election fair and square. So what were the points that you thought or you think could have made the opposition restless as they are today?
Well, I think there has been a collapse in political dialogue consultation. Let me take the minds of our viewers back. Before the elections, there was this disagreement what type of elections were to be used. Used to have in Sierra Leone the constituency based for the legislature, but it was controversial change, and MPs had to engage physical fisticuffs because the press, in the words of the opposition leader then, never consulted with them as to what electoral system was to be used for the just concluded election. And that's where it all started. Mistrust, lack of political control, lack of political dialogue, and that was exhibited by the fact that in Sierra Leone, local and international observers I've recalled or posited that there is a dwindling in public trust in institutions, and these ones are the Electoral Commission, the Judiciary, the Police, the Sierra Leone Police, and other institutions. So, in as much as residents might not have been reaching out to the opposition long before now, owing to the fact that he said the opposition countenanced his authority by way of congratulating him on his first victory and now on this controversial victory. That's where it all started. The big picture there is in Sierra Leone, mistrust in political institutions, in state institutions, is so rife, and that's escalated to what we are seeing. So the president is the president, and also coupled with the fact that we have laws that are very obvious. For example, in the Constitution of Sierra Leone, it's clear that the Constitution is not imperative, meaning that the president can say, I want to employ a system, and just by writing, noted upon. And when the opposition concurs or disagree in our laws, it's not compulsory. So that's been a lacuna in the national law. It has been well capitalized upon by government benches behind the House of Law. So it's quite complex. Of all laws, lack of fiscal willingness from the highest degree, the bottom line remains mistrust in public institutions. And if so politicized that it's very difficult in Sierra Leone to draw the line between political servants or the public servants. It's all in jumbled up. It's all in jumbled. It's quite consequential days of the country.
I ask because I'm curious. You do have civil society in your country. I'm sure you do. And there are obviously people that should be asking for a constitutional review or something, that there are people who are asking for it. How loud are their voices, and have they been lobbying the members for this? Because if there's so much ambiguity within your constitution, which almost makes you presidential, then there is a problem, and the people obviously know that and want to do about it. So what's the level of willingness to push that?
There is the public willingness for constitution, but I suspect over time there is a lack of political willingness. For example, one of the recommendations coming from civil society, fortunately, I was part of the constitutional review subsets at my community or constituency level. I am impressed with some of the provisions. One of the things I learned was the fact that the president is too full. And in the Constitution of Sierra Leone, Section T and all its subsections talks about the rights and the privileges of the president. One of which is supreme executive authority. In Sierra Leone, the supreme executive of the authority of the president is so blanketed, is so far, is so undefined that almost the president wants to get a hand on it, he can get a hand on it. That is one. And other one is the fact that you're not all in Sierra Leone with the constitution where you cannot sit in president accountable for whatever wrong
no way.
And the fact remains, it's stated in the constitution that the acts and actions of the president while in office will be ending to. But guess what? The constitution short saying, what if the president's tenure as if, and now we have a classic case wherein the president, as it stands, a commission of inquiry found him wanting for some American-based or backed company over the sales of tacit government shares to this company. According to findings and the appeals court rule, the former president did not act in good faith. So his lawyers are now arguing that he took decision while he was in office, and it's clearly stated that the activities or actions of the president can require him to. But whether it's done, this is to be done in perpetuity or not, it's unspeaking science. I mean, I stand to be corrected. Over £1 million was spent on the constitutional review process. A document was developed, but unfortunately, it was not taken to Parliament for first consideration and to the people for a referendum. And why? Because some of the provisions, some of the proposals coming from the public, for example, we recommended that there should be a recall clause for members of Parliament who are not performing. And you come to sit and ask yourself, what member of Parliament is going to support that from the civil society and public standpoint? So it's quite a complex mesh, but it's clear that the politicians don't want an ease of their constitutional grip and privileges, and thus they will always drag their feet in making sure that they enjoy the privileges of what is being now described as an almost obsolete 1991 Constitution of Sierra Leone.
I mean, I'm listening to you and it sounds very familiar. But then, of course, I'd give us some kudos, Jerry, because there's the recall clause in our constitution, and our constitution is very powerful. But we're also dealing with the issue of political will and self-interest. But let's move away from your country briefly and let's look at Africa, because I'm guessing also that as a journalist, you're also following stories from outside of your country. We've seen countries like Cameroon, countries like Uganda, and several other African countries almost facing the same sort of almost dictatorial, on the brink of dictatorship, where things like this are happening. Can we categorically or outrightly say that this is an African problem because we have selfish leaders, and it means that maybe we the people ourselves are selfish, and that's the problem that we're facing, and that's also the reason why we have a dearth of leaders as opposed to people who want to usurp all the powers and the monies in our coffers?
I think the problem can be the same, but the causes cannot be uniform. You cannot use the Paul Biya case, which is partly ethnocentric in my estimation, the Francophone and the Anglo, or the Kigami case, as cited. So I will limit myself to West Africa, for example. If you look at the military coup in Guinea and compare that to Mali, it's quite different. Mali, they are saying, oh, the French is too hard and this is not equitable and things like that. But if you look at other countries, they are telling you that bad leadership, failure on the part of our leaders to provide basic social services. So on one hand, yes, we are having a rise in tide of tyrannical and authoritarian leadership. But the things that are pulling these factors may vary from country to country. In Sierra Leone, for example, people will tell you that, oh, the climate of political tolerance is not here. But should that be a justification for a coup? Or somebody will tell you that for Conakry, most of the big companies have got some French influence behind them, or the former leader before now was a dictator, so he should be ousted. So I think one size cannot fit all. But the fact remains: bad leadership, corruption, political brinksmanship, and all of those things can be part of the generic problem in of Africa. why we are seeing a rise in coups in Africa.
Great. Melvin, you've done so great. But I'm being joined by Mr. Chris, who's also someone who's watching what's been happening in Sierra Leone. Mr. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. How would you describe the political atmosphere in Sierra Leone from your perspective? Mr. Chris, can you hear me? I don't think that you can hear me. Yes, I can. Okay. Perfect.
Thank you.
Yes.
So the atmosphere in Sierra Leone is not really different from any other country in West Africa or in Africa. The economic challenge is not unique to Sierra Leone. There are calamities of economic woe in countries like Nigeria, with all of the wealth that exists there. But Sierra Leone is more like, beyond not being a landlocked country, you will expect some influx of resources. But the country is a small country. Most big businesses wouldn't come to a country like Sierra Leone to invest because the turnover for your investment may not come quickly. So Sierra Leone is relying it more become like a donor support country, in all honesty. It doesn't have oil resources like most West Africa countries like Nigeria do. Most resources of government of Nigeria come from the oil sector, even though services is becoming like the biggest. So it doesn't really need to provoke certain things that happened on November 26th. But if you understand the terrain across West Africa, democracy is weakening. Everywhere people are now complaining that democracy is no longer delivering the dividend. And in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Cote d'Ivoire, in Senegal, the language is the same, that elected officials are not delivering on the promises they made. While they are going in for election, they promise to even put air condition on the street. You and I know that it is not realistic to have air conditioning on the street. They bamboozle people. They create unnecessary issue campaigns that are not realistic. They promise all manner of things because they want votes. And when people start relying on those things, it becomes a challenge. When people talk about the rising cost of goods and services, if you interrogate Ghana, you interrogate Nigeria, you interrogate Sierra Leone, they're almost the same landscape. And all of these countries blame Russia, the Russia-Ukraine war. And then before you know, they start thinking about climate change, which has become a fundamental problem across the board. And I believe, with all sincerity, that military intervention can never be a solution in any of the West African countries. As I speak to you now, Guinea is already, the people are tired of the military regime. Meanwhile, when the military regime took over, they were all happy on the street. The song is no longer the same.
Chris, I'm so sorry. Chris, I'm so sorry. We have to go on a quick break. When we come back, I want you to talk about the military takeover and what people are feeling now. But it's still global update, global review. We'll be right back after these messages to continue to talk about Sierra Leone. Stay with us.
So if you're looking forward to a mind-blowing experience this December, then you have to listen to this gist I'm about to give you, okay? So Word on the Street is one of the biggest Africa's exports is coming home. Yeah, the mind-blowing stage musical and concert is here. Introducing Afrobeats the musical. So where would you rather be on the 16th of December? Come experience the art, the emotions, and the magic of Afrobeats live on the big stage. Trust me, you do not want to miss it. Your face will be pulling up live. I'm talking about Ilebae, Neo, Thatcher, Yemi Craig's, Kanaga, Groovy, Nasboy, and many more. And the host with the most, Eniolua and Layu Wasabi. Afrobeat the Musical will take place on the 16th of December 2023, and it is going down at the Balmoral Convention Center, Victoria Island, Lagos. Time is 5 p.m. There'll be special performances by some of Africa's biggest superstars, including Walls, Bayani, Odumodu Black, and a surprise performance by one of Africa's biggest superstars. I'm sure you're wondering who. Well, if you want to find out, you definitely know what to do. Get your tickets now at trx.africa/Afrobeat. That is small letters trx.africa/Afrobeat. Lagos, you definitely do not want to miss out on having a good time. So mark your calendars for the 16th of December and make it a date. Afrobeat the musical. Afrobeat is coming home.
This is an infomercial. We report, you decide. Topical conversations that matter to you.
There are people for personal, religious, whatever reasons who do not want to take a vaccine. And I think they have the right.
They cannot go to us to stop insecurity. It's to force people to take vaccine. Let them come and kill me. I can never take it.
99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk. It's that time of the year when folks everywhere are bundled up or shoveling snow.
But while they seek warmth in cocoa mugs, you'll be in South Africa sipping on sunshine cocktails.
You should certainly trade the snow for warm beach sand in South Africa.
The land of endless summer fun, because that's exactly what you need and deserve.
Explore an extended summer holiday in South Africa. Visit southafrica.net today to explore how to turn snowy blues into summer hues for a dirty, dirty December. Come journey with us.
Guy, feel like say them don't postpone Christmas this year. How now? You don't come again. Omo, I never hear sound of banger. My mama never start to train chicken. Even my babe said she never buy Christmas cloth. Everywhere just dry. So you never hear of Jumia Chop Life season? Yes, so Jumia Chop Life season don't come from 4th to 24th December. Make you download the Jumia app today so you go fit enjoy better deals on top appliances, phones, fashion items, beauty products, and many more. So what do you wait for when you fit pay where them deliver and even do free return and refund safe? Oh yeah, start to the shop on top Jumia so your December go sweet. Jumia, your everyday delivered.
Mom, let's celebrate Christmas at its peak. I want Christmas lights so bright they could see it in space. Wow! I want a Christmas tree so tall players would have to watch out.
Think bigger.
Like what?
Pancakes stacked to the ceiling, delicious eggs, and a peak milk smoothie.
Just for me. Now that's Christmas at its peak.
Because truly, a peak Christmas is Christmas at its peak. Peak. Reach for your peak.
As you see me so, I belong to the Chop Better gang. Now why anytime I want chop like this, I dey put better things inside. For my yam porridge, after I don't put my fish, I go con deck am with onions, tatashe and ugu, con season am with correct no cubes for that delicious taste. Because my people, good life na life where you chop better.
Sama all your food with correct vegetables. Come season am with no cubes for that ogbonge delicious taste. Today, chop better.
Let there be. Whatever you wish for this season, Amazon
prolonged stay on the computer? What's your secret?
My guy, it is Visual Gain, my nutritional eye support. Visual Gain, an eye antioxidant effective in the management and prevention of glaucoma and cataract. A balanced formula for healthy eyes and good vision. A perfect blend of lutein, bilberry fruit extract, zeaxanthin, vitamin A, and zinc. It protects the eyes from harmful UV rays. It prevents and treats dry, red, and irritable eyes. It also maintains image clarity, visual acuity, and reduces eye fatigue. Marketed and distributed by Almond Ethicals Limited, a registered trademark of Gain World. Available in pharmacies near you.
Use Visual Gain today to maintain a healthy eye.
Have you seen the new Mirinda 60cl bigger bottle? Is plenty. It's got a new look, refreshing taste, and the size. You can legit start drinking at 1 p.m., 3 p.m., 8 p.m. Okay, I exaggerated, but you get the drift.
Get more refreshments and more enjoyment from Mirinda's 60cl bigger bottle, also available in pineapple flavor. Mirinda's 60cl bigger bottle, more refreshments and more enjoyment is plenty.
Hey there, folks! The holiday season is here, and you know what that means.
It's time to treat yourself with Xiaomi's incredible end-year promotion.
Get ready for a shopping extravaganza from the 30th of October to the 31st of December 2023.
We've got amazing discounts on your incredible Redmi Note 12 series, Redmi 12C, Redmi 12, and the latest Xiaomi 13T.
But that's not all. When you shop with Xiaomi during this festive season, you stand a chance to win cash prizes.
You could win a whopping 6 million naira in cash.
But wait, there is more.
What's more?
You get 20% discount off all Xiaomi products, plus exciting prizes like Xiaomi TV, Xiaomi luggage, and more instant gifts during this special promotion. It's a deal you don't want to miss.
With the Ember season coming, now is the perfect time to treat yourself.
So, make your wish list. Head over to your nearest Xiaomi authorized store or visit Xiaomi on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter now. Xiaomi, making every season merry and bright.
Xiaomi.
Alex, this is why you prophets like this come for my shop. What's happen now?
My sister, I almost lost my close friend yesterday. He suddenly collapsed, so I was not sick at all. I dey fear. Nobody knows who is next.
When last did you do a checkup using the Easy Care app?
What is that?
Easy Care is a medical app that allows you to find any nearby doctor and lab scientist you're looking for.
Wow.
With Easy Care, you can do a video or physical consultation with any doctor, and you can also request any test and have it done in your house. Download Easy Care on Play Store or App Store and book any service you want. Easy Care is spelled EZZYCARE. Easy Care.
Thank you so much, my friend. I'll go download them now.
I'm here. Let's record.
Wow, I almost didn't recognize you.
Have I changed that much?
Your skin is simply brilliant.
Oh, yes. Idol Lightning Exfoliating Soap. It's my secret to clear, beautiful skin.
You look ready for your music video.
Idol Lightning Exfoliating Soap. Be bold, be beautiful, be Idol. Idol also comes in carrot and papaya variants. Idol is NAFDAC approved.
It's subsidy season. Win fuel vouchers, shopping vouchers, and airtime in the Hair Subsidy promo brought to you by Hares Insurance Group. When you renew or buy any motor insurance plan from Hares Insurance Group, you get an instant gift and qualify to win one of 25 fuel vouchers worth 100,000 naira each. Yes, that's right, a 100,000 naira fuel voucher. The Hair Subsidy promo is open from now until December 31st, 2023. To renew or buy a motor insurance plan, chat with Prince on WhatsApp number 0911 400 9420 or call 0700 434 7746. Terms and conditions apply. Approved by the FCCPC and NLRC.
Hi, darling. How have you been?
I've been so busy, Granny. Well, Friday, I went on a field trip to see gorillas in Rwanda. Then, I slayed a few dragons with my friends. On Saturday, I watched football game in London live with my brother. And then, I went to bed watching the world from space. And you, Grandma?
That's a lot. How?
All I needed was my phone, laptop, TV, and Airtel's 5G.
Lag-free gaming, hyper-realistic VR, 8K streaming, and so much more. With Airtel 5G's lightning-fast speeds and seamless connectivity, you won't believe what's next. Live the future in the Airtel 5G zone.
Airtel.
a reason to imagine.
Jingle all the way to joy with Grand Square's Christmas Bonanza from December 14th to 16th. The magic of savings is in the air. Lagos, Kano, Abuja, we are turning on your Christmas wishes into reality with discounts so merry. It's the season to be shopping. Pull out your Christmas shopping list and enjoy massive discounts with our Christmas Bonanza. Tis the season for joyful shopping at Grand Square. Enjoy massive discounts across our stores. Grand Square Lagos, Grand Square Abuja, Grand Square Kano, or Rap Joy with every purchase. From supermarket items to perfect presents, Grand Square is your festive wonderland. Picture this: eyes filled with laughter, carts overflowing with savings. It's not just a sale, it's a Christmas shopping bonanza. Save the date, December 14th to 16th. Make your Christmas sparkle with Grand Square, your one-stop shop for festive cheers. Grand Square Christmas Bonanza, where the savings are grand.
Every parent wants to see their child growing up happy and healthy. Introducing Renzo Vitamins for Kids, a secret to your child's daily nutrition and boundless joy. With Renzo Vitamins, your child will have the energy to embrace every moment and unlock their full potential. Give your child a head start in life with Renzo Vitamins for Kids, because a happy child is a healthy child.
Meals have a way of taking us on a journey, and when you add plenty of vegetables like efo, ugu, and season with the rich taste of North seasoning cubes, even better.
So, go ahead and elevate your meals with more vegetables and the rich taste of Knorr cubes. Today, eat for good.
Connection is very important, especially when it's strong, and you don't realize this until you are cut off. Keep your connection strong at home or on the go with Airtel Home Broadband Internet. Get any of our devices, like the 7500 MiFi or the 10,000 router with instant 30 gigabytes or the 20,000 router with instant 100 gigabytes. Hurry to the nearest Airtel shop or visit www.airtel.com.ng/HBB to get started.
Airtel, a reason to imagine.
With just 200 naira, you can win 5 million naira in the BetKing Pick 11 jackpot. Visit betking.com. Deposit 200 naira in your account to play and predict 11 games correctly from the jackpot lobby. Also, you can win a cash prize of 1 million naira when you predict 10 correct out of 11 games. Win up to 500,000 naira when you predict 9 correct games and a cash back of 200 naira when you predict only 8 correct games. Start placing your bets now on BetKing Pick 11 jackpot bet. Play responsibly.
That feeling, that's BetKing.
This holiday season, power up your Christmas with JMG. JMG brings you exclusive discounts on all FG Wilson generators powered by Perkins. We also have a special offer with every purchase of 12, 14, or 20 kVA generator. You will receive free 4,000 VA inverter. Not one, not two, but 3 Leave Fast batteries with a 30-month warranty. Invest in your future. Invest in your comfort. Secure your power with JMG. This promo runs from the 1st to the 31st of December. Don't miss out. Make your power move now. Visit JMG showrooms or call 0803-970-2299 and bring home more than just a generator this Christmas. JMG. From power to plug.
To cook correct food, they always give me joy. That's now why anytime when they cook like this, I they always season them with Knorr cubes. Come add correct vegetables inside. Ugu, tatasheo, shombo, onions. No one will know they put. Now he make my pikin them, they always enjoy my cooking.
Daddy, I never will I want more.
You sama all your food with correct vegetables. Come season them with Knorr cubes for that to get delicious taste. Today, chop better.
Jingle all the way to joy with Grand Square's Christmas Bonanza from December 14th to 16th. The magic of savings is in the air. Lagos, Kano, Abuja, we are turning on your Christmas wishes into reality with discounts so merry. It's the season to be shopping. Pull out your Christmas shopping list and enjoy massive discounts with our Christmas Bonanza. Tis the season for joyful shopping at Grand Square. Enjoy massive discounts across our stores. Grand Square Lagos, Grand Square Abuja, Grand Square Kano, or Rap Joy with every purchase. From supermarket items to perfect presents, Grand Square is your festive wonderland. Picture this: eyes filled with laughter,
laughter, cards overflowing with savings. It's not just a sale, it's a Christmas shopping bonanza. Save the date, December 14th to 16th. Make your Christmas sparkle with Grand Square, your one-stop shop for festive cheers. Grand Square Christmas Bonanza, where the savings are grand.
99.3 Nigeria Info.
Your number one station for talk. Let's talk.
This is Hard Facts.
Yes, this is Hard Facts on the nation's number one talk news and sports radio station. We're broadcasting live from Lagos, Nigeria. And from our audiovisual studios, you can watch and listen to us live from anywhere in the world. Just go to www.nigeriainfo.fm. Or better still, you can download the Nigeria Info mobile app, and then you can take us everywhere you go, even if you're going to Mars. We've got 10 minutes on the clock. It's still Global Review, and I've been talking with two gentlemen joining us via Zoom in Freetown. Are you in Freetown? Yes, you are in Freetown. And they have been talking to us about the political climate in Sierra Leone and the fact that a former president has been fingered for the recent coup attempt that took place in Sierra Leone. I've been speaking with Melvin Tejan Mansaray. He is the Interim International Desk Officer, Sierra Leonean Parliamentary Press Gallery, and also being joined by Mr. Chris. Before we went on that break, Mr. Chris, you were trying to talk about, the situation and how Sierra Leone is almost like the same for all of the West African countries and all that we're going through, even though it might not be exactly the same, but then there's something that ties all of us together. Quickly, Mr. Chris, how do we salvage the situation in Africa? Because these coup attempts have become one too many. It's either it's a coup attempt or it's a group of people who are unsatisfied with what we will call an electoral process that many would say does not even fit to be called an electoral process. Mr. Chris. Can you hear me, Chris? Chris, can you hear me?
Okay, sorry, I was muted.
All
I
right.
had to unmute.
Quickly, in 2 minutes.
Yeah, before we went on.
Yeah.
Yes, before we went on the break, I was talking about the military regime is not in any way near the solution.
Mm-hmm.
Not at all. The uprise of military coup in West Africa is a message sent to the fall or the inability of elections to deliver on our selection process or on our leadership selection process. And I was trying to show you to tell you about an example in Guinea after the military coup in that country.
Mm-hmm.
Citizens ran to the street in excitement and they were all happy. As I speak to you now, that excitement has reversed. Nothing has now, there's no improvement in their livelihood. The same thing had happened in Niger. As I speak to you now, citizens in Niger are no longer excited. The same thing happened in Burkina Faso. As I speak to you now, you criticize the military regime that there's still insecurity in Burkina Faso. They will give you a gun to go and fight the insurgent. So it's not the same thing in countries like Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Ghana, because there's a civilian regime in those countries. So often they will say that the worst democratic regime is better than the military regime. Some people will argue against that philosophical tendency. But I'm saying that until we improve our selection process, our leadership selection process, and one way to do that is to strengthen the architecture of our elections.
Okay.
Our election must truly deliver on those who win elections and who the people truly voted for.
Okay.
And as I speak to you, people will always be angry, even in the United States elections. All through Donald Trump as president, the Democrats never believed Donald Trump won elections. But there are systems to show that. You have to go through the system and not to topple the regime. Now they were going to see democratic coup. I use the word democratic coup, where a civilian regime will win an election or manipulate himself or herself into power, and Suddenly, because of threat of coup, like we saw in Guinea-Bissau, very recently, last week or thereabout, where the president, because of the threat of coup, dissolved the parliament. And nobody is talking about it. How can one president dissolve another arm of government? So these are tendencies that further defeat of democracy. The same thing has happened in Senegal, where Macky Sall wanted to go front for a third term, even though he was also the one who reduced the term from 7 years to 5 years. Back to Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone
Mr. Chris,
democracy,
in
my
one
opinion,
sentence, because we have to go. We have to go. In one sentence.
yes, in one sentence, we must work on our democracy and make it work.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chris. But we want to open up the phone lines and let Nigerians join the conversation. 0700 993 993 993. It's Global Review, and we're looking at Sierra Leone and the political situation. Is there any similarity whatsoever with what we're experiencing in Nigeria? And some people, I hear you saying, under your breath, we're better off. Oh, please, don't even start. But then, could we learn something also from what's going on in Sierra Leone and every other country that has been mentioned in this conversation? Because the reason why we go beyond borders is so that we could look at what's happening there, not just to criticize, it's not just to talk about it, but see how we can better our lot and learn or borrow a lift from what's happening there. Let's take some calls. Hello. Welcome to Hard Facts.
Marianne.
Yes.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You have Engineer Christian Obazelu are calling from Nigeria.
Go ahead.
See, Marianne, the problem we are having in West Africa, democracy or politics, is bad leadership. Majority of the West African leaders, be it the Francophone or the Anglophone ones, are all corrupt and bad. Just like Nigeria, just like Sierra Leone. Exactly what is happening in Nigeria is what is happening. And unfortunately, they have an APC in Sierra Leone there. Only that one is
I knew someone was going to pick that. I knew it.
Yes, that one is on the position. If I will even ask the people of Sierra Leone, they should never allow any name APC even come to point, because we in Nigeria know what we are suffering.
Oh, please.
Honestly speaking. And Mariam, do you know the worst thing? Hello?
I'm listening quickly. You have four seconds.
Yeah. Do you know the worst thing? All these West African leaders are just doing all these things. When the inevitable happens, they will not bring up ECOMOG, African Union, and all these things to come and help the flush out what they themselves have started.
All right. Thank you very much, Chris, for calling. Hello. Apologies. Do call us back if that was you. Hello. Welcome to Global Review.
Hello.
Good evening. Go ahead.
Yes. Good evening.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have 60 seconds. Quickly.
Yes. I sent a message now. Please check. Anyway, you see, like the last caller said, it is sad. I could feel the sentiment of your guest there concerning, military rulership. Definitely, that should be the last resort. But of course, they say that when desirability is not available, so then availability will become desirable. So it's because these guys have never even shown the path of good governance, all over. It's just similar to what we're experiencing now. Do you think that at some point, especially even before the final Supreme Court or whatever, if Nigerians here, if they had the option of, putting side by side democracy and military, do you think that they would have chosen the military now?
We wouldn't.
So the impunity, the corruption, the all sorts of intimidation, as your guy was saying in
your 60 seconds is over. I'm so sorry. We're sticking to 60 seconds. Thanks for calling. Hello.
Yeah, Action Lady, good evening.
Good evening. You have 60 seconds.
No problem. That thing you did on 25th of February, you want to call that one an election?
Who's you people?
Nigerians.
Okay.
That thing we want to do, where they say, we can got democracy, but even the Supreme Court did not help matters. The only law they have is that these, all these small countries, that the military are flushing all these politicians away, will not happen here. Because they know whatever they dish out to us, we absorb it. That is the law they have. If not, this is not democracy. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chris Falling. Hello. Welcome to Global Review.
Hello.
Good evening. Turn off your radio, please. I don't want to hear myself.
Yeah, hello, Mariam. Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Mbasi, calling from Ojabara.
Go ahead. You have 60 seconds. Quickly.
Okay. You see what is happening in Sierra Leone, especially in this African country. It's very, very sad. our leaders are so wicked, very, very wicked, generally African leaders, very, very wicked. They travel out of this country to other country, they learn there, they school there. When they came back home, they do something differently. You see what is happening in Leone? It's the same thing happening here in Nigeria. Because the coup is not strange to Nigeria. We are living in the past through coup before. But the reason why still unite us here, still practicing this democracy, because we are together. If not, what is happening in other countries will happen to this country called Nigeria.
Okay, all
it's
right.
bad. It's always shame. It's always very, very shameful. Something.
All right, thank you very much. And there goes your 60 seconds. I can take one quick message. This one's from someone says, when will Nigerians agree that what Jerry Rawlings did in Ghana will be the solution that Nigeria needs now? Otherwise, let Nigerians be given to foreign managers to handle for some years. Political structure in Nigeria should be abolished in its entirety. Okay, we have run out of ideas. We shouldn't be hypocritical about this. They decided to use the World Bank to admit what they've been hiding. Steve, thank you for your message. Someone says, Tunde from Ekpe says, why are some African leaders, or why do they find interest in foreign countries? Example, going for summits, visitations, leaving their major responsibility to the citizens that elected them. Why? Why only love for power? Is there any spiritual attachment to this? That's very funny. Melvin, I want to say thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a very interesting conversation and a very interesting analysis that you've given us. The average person has a clear picture of what's happening in Sierra Leone, and we can only hope for the best and hope that, you know, something good comes out on the other end for you guys. Thank you so much, Melvin, for coming on the show.
It's a pleasure being on the show. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Thank you. All right, Lagos, there you have it on Global Review. We're going to take a break. And when we come back on the other side of the clock, it's time for A's and Nays. And yes, of course, we'll be talking today about what has happened in the River State House of Assembly, the mathematics of the River State House of Assembly. You'll be interested to listen after the break.
This is an infomercial.
Get the best of entertainment and fun this December at the Afrobeats The Musical Concert. It is the first of its kind.
99.3 Nigeria Info. We are more than just radio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Nigeria Info FM. Check us out on Facebook at Nigeria Info 99.3. Follow us on Twitter at Nigeria FM and on Instagram at Nigeria Info FM Lagos for live updates as it happens. 99.3